Good morning, everyone. This is Keith Johnston, presenting my second in a series of 3 webinars on increasing the results in your consulting business. In my first webinar 3 weeks ago, I spoke about how to set and achieve seemingly impossible goals. For any of you that were unable to attend that webinar or are interested in the recording, I will provide you with some contact information at the end of this webinar, and you can contact me, email me, or call me, and I'll make sure you can get that recording. Today, I'm going to discuss how collaboration can significantly improve your results. You'll have the opportunity to enter questions that I will get to at the end of our session. You'll see a Q&A box on your screen. If you want to enter a question, something comes up during the presentation, feel free to enter the question, and I'll pick up the questions at the end and deal with them before we sign off. I'm without a technical assistant this morning, so hopefully everything will flow smoothly from here. There we go. I think the first slide is up. Our agenda today will basically be broken into 3 areas. First of all is a question of why not collaborate. And secondly, I'm going to get into some case studies or some scenarios on some significant results that I've experienced through collaboration and share with you the lessons learned in those situations. And finally, we're going to go through a checklist on how to ensure that your collaboration efforts are successful. Let's start with my definition of collaboration, or a definition that actually isn't mine, but the one I want to use for today's session. And collaboration is a working practice whereby individuals or companies work together to a common purpose to achieve business benefit. First question, why not collaborate? Throughout my career, I've probably heard more reasons as to why not to collaborate than reasons for collaboration. And it was only when I got started in ignoring those reasons that I started to realize some significant success in business. So as I go through the next few slides, we're going to address these reasons as to why not to collaborate. Fear of loss of control, fear of diminished returns, insecurity, or lack of trust. First one, and probably the most common reason I've heard in my career for why not to collaborate with another organization or with another individual is because of the fear of loss of account control. I can't tell you how many times I heard that as an excuse or a reason as to why not to engage with another firm. The partners or senior executives in the firms that I've worked for would always say, you know, we don't want to include them. We might lose control of the account. And in losing control, I guess the fear was we're going to lose our ability to generate future income, our ability to, depending upon the nature of the company you work for, maybe manipulate the client or get the client to purchase your goods and services as opposed to that of another organization. So, number one fear, and I'm going to come back to that towards the end because it is such a common concern. The second biggest reason is diminished returns. I think there's a fear among a lot of organizations that there's a finite amount of revenue you can earn from each client. And therefore, if you share that client with somebody else, another consulting firm, another consultant, then you're going to get a smaller piece of the pie. I guess in some cases, you'll find that greed will drive this concern of diminished returns. You know, why would we give a portion of our business to somebody else when we can have it all? And again, I think the fear there is that there is a general fear that there is a finite amount of money coming from each client, and we, as our firm, want all of it. So the second biggest reason why not to collaborate. Excuse me just a second. Okay. Third, insecurity. And insecurity can be summed up in one word: fear. Fear of loss of job. When the managing partner finds that you've shared some of the business with another firm and we didn't get all the business, he may decide that you no longer belong to that organization. Fear of loss of control, we've touched on that, or loss of revenue. The demotion, weakness. I think a lot of people feel that collaborating with another partner is frequently a sign of weakness and can cause you to get demoted. Or another way would simply say a loss of self-esteem. And finally, lack of trust. I think this is another huge reason that companies and individuals don't want to collaborate with others, because we basically don't trust other organizations. We get in the habit from a very early age, because of the competitive world we live in, where we don't trust our competition, don't trust somebody from another organization. I've been involved with football for the better part of my life, and you always start off trying to paint the coaches and even as players, paint a negative picture of the competition. They're evil. We don't trust them. We think they're always going to try to get an advantage over us. So a general lack of trust of your competition can prevent or be a big reason why you wouldn't want to collaborate with them and share business with them. Okay, I'm sure there may be some other reasons that you have out there that you've been inundated with in your career, or concerns you have, but those are the primary reasons that I've experienced why people don't like to collaborate with other companies or other individuals. For the next few minutes, I'm going to discuss three fairly significant success stories that I experienced in my career as a result of collaboration. The first one I've referred to is $60 million. The second, 33% increase. And the third, $25 million. In the first one, I would say that the collaboration came out of necessity or as a last resort. I was given the opportunity a number of years ago to lead the development of an energy consulting practice for a large international professional services firm in Europe. The firm was providing audit and tax services to some very, very large energy organizations in England and in Europe, and I was promised that I would be introduced to decision makers in each of those organizations. And through those introductions, I would then have an opportunity to generate significant amounts of consulting business for my employer. What I found out early on was that those companies were very happy with the audit and tax services provided by my firm, but were also very happy with the consulting firms they were using for the consulting services they need, and frankly didn't want to use my firm. to help them with some of their business issues and some of their IT issues. In other words, it was going to be an uphill battle for me to break in to any of those organizations. So I was in pretty much of a desperate state. Fortunately, I was approached by the marketing department, who assisted me in developing a marketing program which highlighted the expertise that me and my people had in the gas industry. The marketing efforts were successful in getting a few inquiries from some of the other gas companies, oil and gas companies in Europe that my employer did not do work for. But more importantly, what it generated was a strong interest on the part of a large hardware company and a large software company in teaming up with us to approach some of the customers that they were going after. As it turns out, they were involved in a large number of organizations, but didn't have the business expertise or knowledge to basically penetrate those customers to the extent that they felt was possible. They weren't realizing the potential out of those organizations, those customers, that they felt was possible. And they felt that teaming with somebody that had in-depth knowledge of the business issues would enable them to do that. So they approached me, and I agreed, to work with them and to make calls on their customers. Now, to make a long story short, within a few months, we were able to, through those connections, through that collaboration, generate a project which ultimately yielded over $60 million in fees for my firm and provided substantial revenue also for the software and hardware companies that assisted me in that process. As I look back upon it, I was in a situation in the first scenario where I was dealing only with my firm's clients, where I had limited possibilities. I was basically, a fence was drawn upon around the clients of the firm that the firm felt would be good client opportunities. And those were the ones I was supposed to go after. When I started collaborating with other organizations, I found myself in a situation of limitless possibilities. I not only still had access for potential work with the clients, my firm's clients, but I now had access to many, many more opportunities which I had not had access to before. $60 million was the first of a few successes that came out of that relationship. Okay, second story. In this situation, I was working for a consulting firm, and I was actually overseeing a fairly large systems development project for the largest client in our office. We had approximately 15 full-time consultants assigned to the project. And we, at the point in time that the story occurred, we were approximately 9 months away from completing the project. And what happened was our client hired an executive from our number one competitor. And not just any executive. This was a chief financial officer who also oversaw all the projects, and our project included. At the point of his assignment, or shortly thereafter, he announced that he was turning project management responsibilities over to his previous firm, our competitor. And at that point, my management determined that our opportunities and probably our business with that particular client were over. And they instructed me to start reassigning all the people that I had on the project to other projects, freeing them up to work for other account managers in the company, and basically dismantling our efforts on the project. So it's between a rock and a hard place, so to speak. But I sat back and I thought, and I talked to our project manager and asked him, given the fact that we were 9 months away from completion, what were the possibilities of the other firm successfully completing the project within the 9 months remaining, given they had no previous experience working on that particular project, and we had 15 people that had been working there for 2 years. The project manager indicated to me that he didn't think there was any way they could complete the project on time. At that point in time, without the approval of any of my management personnel, I called the senior executive in charge of the project from our competitor who had been assigned by the new chief financial officer. And I asked him when we would be able to get together to determine how we would work jointly on the project. And what was interesting was that even though he'd been involved and assigned for a week or so, he didn't even think that we would continue on. I caught him quite by surprise. He requested an hour to get back to me. And then given that hour, he realized that there was no way he could go forward without us and could not afford to lose us. And it was given the culture of my firm and given the directions from my immediate supervisors, it was a bold move on my part to take that step to approach him. But had I not done it, I would have been forced to dismantle the project, which ultimately would have hurt us significantly. We may have been able to salvage some of the people, but it would have caused a lot of problems internally had we dismantled that project and had we walked away from it. Interesting enough, given the competitive nature, we were able to work very effectively together, develop some strong relationships, realize that the other people were actually good people, and we all had one primary goal in mind, and that was to meet the needs of our respective client. So it ended up being a very successful project. We ended up having a joint celebration and a party where people from both firms were involved in the celebration. Going on to my third case study, what I call a $25 million case study. So the situation where the software company that I was working with was pursuing a very large enterprise deal with a multinational oil company. We had been talking to the company, trying to put a deal together for several months. And we knew we were in competition with our number one competitor. And both of us were offering a suite of products and services that would basically tie us in with that client and guarantee a steady stream of revenue for several years to come. About the time we were thinking we had it won and feeling pretty good about it, our customer approached us and told us that they wanted to select the best from each of our firms, and they wanted us to work together on the implementation and ongoing support. Well, needless to say, we almost all wanted to throw up at that point in time. We had never worked with our competitor before. This horrendous fear of loss of control, loss of revenue, permeated our organization. And our first reaction was one of shock and one of, no, we won't do this. We debated that. We had a few more conversations with the customer. We realized they were not going to back down. And essentially, if we weren't going to cooperate, they would go to the competitor full-time and buy all the services in there. But their ideal scenario was to work with both of us and to get the best services and products that each of us had to offer. Well, ultimately, we did break down. We agreed to the collaboration, and it turned into approximately $25 million over the next couple of years for my firm. And interesting enough, we didn't all disappear and turn into pumpkins. We learned a lot from the experience. That, and more importantly, we delivered value, significant value, to our client, and managed to make it through the next few years without any major disruptions because of the fact that we were now dealing with our competitor. So, 3 different scenarios, 3 different reasons for collaboration. One out of necessity, one out of just common sense, and one in order to survive in a competitive environment, or you might say we were forced into it. So let's take a step back for a minute and think about what it takes to make collaboration work. Given all the reasons I discussed early on, it takes leadership, it takes courage, and it takes innovation. But I guess more importantly, collaboration relies on openness, knowledge sharing, and also a level of focus and accountability on the part of each of the business organizations. It requires us to change our thinking and push ourselves out of our comfort zone as we address what are seemingly impossible challenges. I think in each of those situations, we were in a position of having to swallow our pride. The saying goes, take the high road. Open up your mind to different possibilities. Study the needs of the market and our strength vis-a-vis our competitors. I think if you look at, all of us would like to think that we can provide the full range of services, that we can take care of most of our clients' needs. But in reality, we've got our strengths and we've got our weaknesses. And shoring up our strengths and playing to our strengths is key, but also recognizing the fact that we have the weaknesses and there may be another solution out there. There may be a solution that would deliver higher value to the client and that the client would appreciate. I must say that after each of these different situations, my eyes were opened to greater possibilities and the realization that most of the companies I dealt with would prefer if we offered a best-in-class solution and that if we managed the relationship with a third party or another vendor to ensure that they got the results, the benefit delivered to them within a reasonable time frame at a reasonable cost. I ran across this set of rules of collaboration that I'm going to run through very, very quickly, but I think it kind of sums up the different areas that need to be considered in putting together a collaborative effort and achieving the results that you desire. The 6 C's of collaboration. First one, conversation. Take the time to initiate the conversation. Reflecting back upon the 3 different case studies that I just went through, and in each of those cases, or at least the first 2 cases, somebody took some initiative. Somebody had some courage to say, let's go talk to them. Let's go talk to the other party and see if we can form a kind of relationship that can be mutually beneficial. Confrontation. Expressing an alternative point of view. And if you're working for a firm, if you're working for yourself, you just have to question yourself. Are you on the right path? Will the path you're on ultimately get you to where you want to be? Is there a better way? Internally, I must say that in the organizations that I've worked with in my career, that's a difficult question to answer. Again, most companies, they don't like change, and they don't like having to get out of their comfort zone. But somebody ultimately has to propose an alternative question to get the minds going. So confronting the status quo and taking an alternative approach. Communication. Listening and being receptive. So often we get blinded by our habits, our experiences, the way we've always done business, the seemingly right way to do business, that we just don't listen to alternatives, and we're not receptive to new ideas. Like I said earlier, when I listed the reasons, a lot of those reasons that I got into a collaborative situation were out of desperation or out of force by our clients. But subsequent to that, I've been involved in more of those situations because I've initiated the conversation. I have realized the potential benefit and taken advantage of that and tried to be receptive to new ideas, new ways of approaching business problems. Cooperation, willingness to work with others. I remember relatively early in my career, I worked for a firm that typically took control of the projects. Large IT consulting firm, a lot of experience, and we tended to take total control of projects. Now I remember a time when, the first time, when we had a large client say that they wanted to co-manage the project with us. And if you've ever been in the situation of co-managing, you know it can be difficult. Decisions sometimes can't be made as fast. You can't make a decision and go quickly because you've got to consult with your co-manager. It caused a lot of anxiety within our firm on the part of managers that were typically command and control type managers. But it was something our clients insisted upon. And we had to basically break down and say, yes, we were willing to work in that environment and figure out how to work in that environment, how to be more influential, how to communicate more effectively with our clients. Collaboration, the building of communal knowledge. This also tends to be one of the bigger issues in collaboration, particularly if you feel like you have a lot of experiences and privileged information which make you unique. And it frequently will cause a breakdown in discussion when you get into how do you protect that information? How do you protect that knowledge? And ultimately, those situations that I found that I've been in, that has been the least of our worries. We frequently found out that an area we thought we were ahead, our competitor who we were collaborating with was at least equal to us, in some cases beyond us. We also found that we learned a lot from them, just like they learned a lot from us. I mentioned earlier, I touched on earlier the idea of the feeling that there's a finite pot of money in each of those clients, and we're wanting to get the most out of that. Well, ultimately what's resulted is that, well, maybe not infinite, but there's a lot more revenue to be earned than a lot of people think there is. And when you take a sense of more abundance, then the limited amount you can get out of there, it becomes easier to share that knowledge and deliver value to your customer. Community. A group who has built a culture of mutual understanding through collaboration. I have, as I mentioned, run into a number of situations since the three I discussed where I've collaborated with other organizations. Some of those stemmed from those original three. And what I found in each of those situations is that through the collaboration, trust was developed. And the development of that trust ultimately enabled us to work on future assignments and to create this community of mutual understanding of how we can work together, how we can increase the revenue potential for both of our firms. When dealing with collaboration issues, I have come now to ask people, do you want 100% of nothing, or do you want 50% of a large pie? And a lot of times when they put it in that perspective, they would much prefer the 50% of the large amount than 100% of nothing, and are therefore willing to create or get into this culture of collaboration. So, to create a collaborative environment, focus on ways to deliver value to your customers. Create a collaborative climate. In other words, be trustworthy, be respectful, and be consistent. Assume good faith. Go in with your guards up 100%. I think you're going to find all the reasons why not to, as opposed to all the reasons to get into a collaborative effort. And have a clear goal in mind. Look for the win-win. You can either be in a confrontational no-win situation, or you can approach it as it's a win-win for everybody. And beginning that dialogue is the first step. Okay. I notice there are a couple of questions here, but before I get to the questions, I want to highlight the fact that I've got one more webinar coming up. I haven't picked the exact date, but I will get back to all of you and let you know exactly when it's going to be. And the next webinar is on developing a culture of leadership. It will be sometime around the middle of January. And the whole basis of this webinar is on the topics of leadership, because one of the biggest obstacles to growth that I've experienced in my career is a shortage of qualified leaders. And what I've discovered is a couple of things. One, companies tend to look for leadership outside their organization as opposed to exploiting, discovering, developing the leaders inside their organization. And the other thing is, frequently organizations focus on leadership development only for the senior executives. The assumption is you don't really become a leader until you reach the upper echelons, and at that point, we'll train you in leadership development or leadership skills. When in fact, the most successful organizations that I've been a part of, have read about and experienced, have been those organizations that believe that everyone in the organization should be exposed to leadership, and particularly as early as supervisory and managerial opportunities, that they learn about leadership and begin to develop their leadership skills very early on. So that'll be coming up. I'll get an email out to every one of you to let you know the exact date of that webinar. Quick recap. And I'm dealing with a little bit of a technical issue here. Bear with me. Okay. Okay, fear prevents companies from collaborating. Collaboration can open doors to opportunities which are otherwise closed. And you must be open to new ideas and willing to challenge conventional thinking. Questions? I've got 2 or 3 questions here, and we've got a little bit of time left. So let me see if I can address these questions. First one to come in says, we cover a full range of service offerings. Why would we want to collaborate with someone else? Well, I'd anticipated this question, but I'd hoped that I'd covered it early on. Bottom line is you may have all the services to meet your client needs, but I bet you have more experience with some of them and that you've got weaknesses in some areas. But more importantly, you probably don't have strong relationships with all the potential clients. In the first case study that I described, I think I'm pretty sure the firm I worked for had all the skills that we needed to serve our group of clients. And I had access to a number of them. The problem is the obstacles were pretty high, pretty steep to getting involved with them. The second scenario involved, I'm sorry, I just got disrupted. More importantly, the opportunities with the other firms, the organizations that you don't have an opportunity to get in touch with. Second question I have is how do you keep a competitor from gaining control of your client? Now, I think, first of all, you've got to work hard at developing a strong relationship with your client, one built on trust and one built on value. If you've got that kind of relationship and have historically delivered high value and been a trusted advisor to your client, then they're going to continue to come to you and they're going to continue to work with you on a one-on-one basis. Secondly, you have to have the conversations and the confrontation with your collaboration partner regarding how you will manage the relationships with the clients. Frequently, you do have to get attorneys involved. You have to drop a document. And it's very important to address those up front. And like I said, it's got to be a win-win from the beginning. And I think in all 3 of the scenarios I mentioned early on in the presentation, the customer kept us in check. They kept our feet to the fire regarding delivery of the value we promised. And they wouldn't tolerate politics or selling beyond the scope of the project we were working on. And finally, you've got to ask yourself if it's worth it to pick up more work with a client you might not have worked for previously in return for potentially losing some of that control. Okay? Time for one more question here. And this question is basically a statement of a question. It says, none of your case studies describe you inviting a competitor into your client. Yes, that's true. The 3 case studies that I described were all situations where I was not actually inviting a competitor in, but I have been involved in scenarios where I did. In one situation, I remember I was working with a software company. We provided extended services, on-site support services, and didn't always have the resources to meet the requirements of all of our customers in a timely fashion. We were aware of a competitive firm that did not sell software like we did, but they did provide the on-site support services that we provided. And we figured out that they also provided those services in some parts of the world where we did not have resources available. I convinced my management to approach them and form a relationship with them whereby we could agree basically not to take each other's business away from each other, not to hire each other's people, and to deliver services in a subcontract situation. It turned out to be very successful. There was a lot of concern and trepidation on the part of our firm when we first entered into it, but I developed the trust, developed the understanding with the competitive firm, and it worked out to the benefit of our clients. And actually, that individual and I have continued to work together on other projects since that situation. One final question here. It says, the first question suggested to me that it assumes that one should always, rather than in some instances, collaborate. Is that what you're saying? No, it's not necessarily what I'm saying. And I apologize if that's how I've communicated it. I think there are lots of opportunities to collaborate, and there are sometimes, if you're looking for opportunities to expand your business, to when current business opportunities are drying up in the area you're currently working, look to greener pastures and use a collaborative effort to help you find those greener pastures. As I had indicated early in the discussion, frequently most people are trained to close their minds to those opportunities because we fear that only negative things could happen. And so what I'm trying to do is encourage people to look beyond those fences, consider teaming with a competitor, and enhancing your opportunities. And in so doing, one of the ways of doing it is realizing that you may have some weaknesses that they could shore up, or they have some clients and some relationships that could help you. In turn, you've probably got some relationships that could help them. I hope that clears that up. Okay, well, we're getting to the end of our 45 minutes. Again, I very much appreciate all of you signing on. I have, I think, 2 more slides here. Well, I don't have those slides. My last 2 slides were just to invite you to contact me if you have any other questions, any desire to follow up, or discuss your personal situation, your specific situation. If you do, you can email me at kjohnston@trueleadership.com, and that's TRU leadership.com. Or you can call me directly at 250-550-3964. We're coming up on the end of the 45 minutes. I like to adhere to those commitments. So again, thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope to talk to you soon. And look for my email regarding the next webinar in January. Thank you.